Hey guys, doing a live chat here. I'm going to be answering your questions. Just trying to get a few things prepped up for it in relation to actually answering those questions. So please feel free to start asking questions because that's why I'm here, is to answer any and all questions you have related to code, writing software, getting a job in software, building a project, whatever it is, just let me know. I'll be answering your questions here. So let's see here. There we go. First one coming through. Here we are. All right. So a big part of the reason I'm doing these things is, well, of course, I want to answer your questions, but also I'm trying to solve the challenge of actually making these live Q&As a lot more, one-to-one, responsive, directly correlated to the messages that might be asked. Anyways, Fong, hello. Thank you for the nice comment. Yeah, great to have you out. Athik, hello. How's it going? So I tried to do it a little bit earlier today so people in the other side of the world are able to easily just jump on. And that's another reason that I'm jumping on right now. Typically, I'd want to do it later in the afternoon, but this is early morning, or well, not quite early morning, but late morning, if you will, for me here in California. But yeah, I'm here answering your questions, whatever questions you may have. Something that's really cool that just came to my doorstep is this really cool thing called a Turing Pi. This, of course, is something I'm definitely going to be using a lot of. I just got it in. I'm probably going to be doing an unboxing at some point to really check out the really interesting things behind a Turing Pi, but most importantly, to really learn how Kubernetes and Docker work and how you might actually be able to go ahead and do those things too. So that's something cool to look forward to. Make sure you subscribe to get that. I'm assuming if you're on this live stream, you are subscribed. The other thing that we want to check out is this topic called, this is annoying, PyPyR. This is another one that's really cool that I'm definitely going to be checking out as well. So those are my next probably big upcoming things on the channel. All right, cool. So do you guys have any questions? Hello? How's it going? Welcome, everybody. Let's see here. Another hello. Welcome, welcome. So I'm here answering your questions. That's the purpose of being here. So if I don't get very many questions to start this off, I'm going to end this live stream on the earlier side. So it really just depends on what it is that you guys want to know. So ask away. Thanks for the tutorials. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Let's see. I definitely need to start doing actual topics on these live streams, so then we're all watching a topic and then can ask questions related to that topic. But what I said earlier was I'm actually really working on getting these live chat comments going, those right there, and making them work really, really well so that future playback of these live events is much better. First question, yes. Hey, Diego, what's going on? Will I do a video about async view in Django? Yes, I definitely will. If you're interested in asynchronous Python, check out my recent video on 30 Days of Python for asynchronous WebSockets. That, I think, is really important to learn how asynchronous works prior to even getting any benefit in Django. Of course, if you did my chat by channels course or series, either one, you definitely would know a lot more about how to do asynchronous things in Django with WebSockets as well. Thanks for the question. Next one, which language do you suggest next if I know Python? To me, JavaScript. JavaScript and Python have a really, really solid relationship. So check out that because JavaScript is also JavaScript might overtake Python in how much it's used. I think it actually already has, but I mean also for the back end things. Like, so imagine a day where Django is written in JavaScript and not just Python, like both things. That would be an interesting day. I think that would be cool to see though, because we've already seen TensorFlow JS. So TensorFlow, of course, is the deep learning library that was originally in probably even in C, but definitely in Python, and now it's in Swift as well as JavaScript, which is awesome. Sorry for the loud noise. Hopefully that goes away soon. I don't know if you can even hear it. I can definitely hear it. Cool. Thanks for the question. Would I recommend PyBuilder or PyInstaller? I've had the best luck with PyInstaller across all of these single part package compilers for Python. So PyInstaller is definitely the one for me. All right, cool. So that is incredibly loud. Can you guys hear that super loud thing? I don't know. Heisberg himself, what am I going to teach? I'm just answering questions right now, so I teach a ton of things. Okay, you do hear it. I'm going to just go pause for just a minute and ask all the questions you want. I'll come back to them. Thanks for waiting, everyone. The trash truck is right out here. It doesn't normally come at this time, so it's kind of an off day for it. So it's making a ton of noise right next to my office. Kind of unpredictable. Sorry about that. So hopefully it's mostly done, but I definitely still hear it out there. So let me know if there are a lot of issues with the questions with the audio quality. Just let me know. I have the live stream going, or the live chat right next to this. So if you guys hear a lot of noise, please just let me know. Okay, cool. Back to it. You watch my WebSocket in Django, which is awesome, but it's only good for text. What about transferring images between server and client? Yeah, so you can pass base64 encoded images with WebSockets. That I think is the best method of doing it. So you can also, oh man, that sound is really loud. Okay, so you can also actually send it asynchronously to something like S3 or something more along those lines. Yeah. Man, that's frustrating. Like, if I just waited 10 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe even 15, I would have not had that same sound issue. It's totally throwing me off. I don't know if you can tell. Cool. I think I will pause once again. Thanks for bearing with this, guys. Okay, I think we're back for good this time. Sweet. Thank you again for dealing with these sound issues. Another thing I need to iron out is knowing when these off-scheduled pickups happen. That was not something I expected at all. Ha. Anyways, okay, back to the questions. Hey, an absolute beginner, but I want to learn how to code. Where do you think you should begin from? I think learning Python is absolutely the best way to start learning how to code, because Python doesn't have all these special characters. It just really deals with spacing, and it looks a lot more like English, even though it doesn't look like English. It looks a lot more like English and how English is written than something like JavaScript, which has a lot of curly braces and semicolons and stuff like that. So I think Python is a great choice for that. Next question: how to stay motivated when learning to code? Well, to me, it's like you got to pick some really compelling reason to learn how to code. Like, I don't think you should just learn how to code just to learn how to code, right? If you have to do it in school, then it's like, oh, well, you're doing that to be successful in school. But let's say, for instance, you just decided that you want to learn how to code. Otherwise, find a really compelling reason, whether that's a project or some sort of future that you want to have, some sort of job, something along those lines. Wow, it's back again. This is awfully frustrating. Okay, well, I'm going to pause for maybe a couple minutes this time, let it finish, and then I'll be back. But I'm going to keep the live stream active, and I will pick up right where I left off on this one. Okay, maybe this time. Sorry, guys. Completely unpredictable. It normally comes on Tuesdays. That's why I don't live stream at that time on Tuesdays, but it came today. So, hopefully the noise is gone, but it's like literally right outside my studio office thing here. All right. So, back to the questions. Thanks for the bearing with me there for a couple minutes. Let's pick up right where we left off. So, I've learned Django and React, and I'm going to switch to Node because people say working with two programming languages is not efficient. I work with them side by side, no problem, right? But, I mean, if you want to move to Node, by all means, move to Node.js. I think it's a great backend, but it's not going to replace Django by itself, right? So Node is like comparing Node to Django is like comparing React to Python, right? Like it's different. It's not like you just can switch easily from Node to Django. But the other thing is like, well, what are you really? What's your goal? Is your goal to just work in one language and that's it, or is it to be flexible to all of the changes that are continuing happening? And I think using Python and JavaScript at the same time allow you to be a lot more resilient because of all of the changes that end up happening. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know what that means. Hi, what's the best way to incorporate Bootstrap in Django if one needs to say, doing the theming with Sass? So how do you use Bootstrap with Django? It's really simple. You just need to have some sort of static server. You can use their CDN, but Django ends up rendering out index pages. So if you can load any CSS or anything into an index page, Django can render it. But to actually serve those things is a whole nother story. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for that. How to become a pro in Python. Now, if you mean like really good, that means a lot of practice, of course. If you mean paid to write Python code, that means that you just need to know enough to actually help someone solve a problem which they would pay you for. Does that answer your question at all? I think a good strategy to get better at Python is to build a lot of projects. That's a good way to practice. And those projects could be ones that you're really interested in. I think that's the best method because then you'll go through the hurdles of the challenges it comes in building any project, let alone ones that are useful. So yeah. Are progressive web apps the future? Yeah, I think it's possible that that we'll see a lot more progressive web apps in the future, but I think it's still really early to tell whether or not they are going to take a really strong hold. You know. Let's see here. Cool. Now the sound is back to normal. Haha. Can I do tutorials on Celery and Django? Yes, I think I already have a bunch of them, but I'm actually releasing a pretty comprehensive project on codingforentrepreneurs.com called Time and Tasks 2. That one will definitely talk about Celery with Django a lot. And I'll have a number of guides on my website too on how to actually get Celery going. There already are a number of guides on there as well. Is native Android iOS development dying? People are switching over to React. I wouldn't say that because, you know, there are developers that specifically develop for iOS, but React Native and Flutter make it a lot easier to do cross-platform development using roughly the same code base while building native applications. So React Native is different than something like what was the other one called? Cordova. So Cordova, you would just run essentially a web page within a app. React Native and Flutter actually build native applications that are installed on those apps, and they work slightly different, but they're a lot faster, a lot better performance. Good question. But the iOS development stuff and Android development, I don't actually think that they will ever go away. If anything, they're going to become a lot more translatable. Like you can change the code bases more. Hopefully, Apple and Google end up finding a common ground there. But if anything, iOS development is always going to be popular as long as the iPhone is the most dominant or most profitable platform there is to develop on. At least that's my thought. How about an Instagram clone? That's a good question. You know, honestly, the Tweet Me Too project is almost an Instagram clone. It just doesn't have a few of the Instagram features, like actually adding images and doing filters and stuff like that. But that's a good idea. Let's see here. HD Sing. There you go. Is that how you pronounce it? Or is it how to sing? I don't know. All right. Let's see here. Oh, I got a little tickle in my throat. There we go. Okay. Can I do tutorials on React Native? I intend to. Thank you for asking. There's a number of React-related things that I absolutely have to do just to kind of update all the React stuff that I already have. Yeah. Is it possible to find a job only knowing Python? Absolutely. There are a lot of Python-only jobs out there. Well, this assumes that you know several other things, but I'm assuming you mean only a Python programming language. Then yeah, you definitely can. Just look on like Indeed.com and see all the jobs that are literally just for Python. There's definitely a number of them out there. A lot of the job listings might say that they want you to know a few other things, but working solely in Python is definitely something you can do. Thanks for the question. Hello, sir. Any necessary to create custom Django admin panel from scratch in a real project? I don't have anything covering this right now. I don't think the Django admin should be modified so much in the sense that you should, if you're doing a lot of customization in the Django admin, honestly, why not just build your own views and require a super user or an admin user to actually be able to go in there? That's my question. Django full stack versus Django React framework and React. Which one do you prefer? Definitely Django REST framework and React. I am really into React. If you have watched any of these live streams before, you would know this. Let's see here. Thanks for the questions, guys, and thanks for dealing with all that sound issue earlier. That was incredibly frustrating. Haha. Okay. Next up, let's see. Can we set up Django and Socket.io to use the same session variables? That's a good question. I haven't ever had to try to do that. My sense is no, you probably cannot. But again, I've never actually tried to do that. Thanks for the question. Node versus Django. So let's see. That's not popping up, is it? There we go. So Node is a almost like it's JavaScript, right? So Node and Django can accomplish a lot of the exact same things, but the better comparison probably would be Node versus Flask. Django has a lot of things that are built into it by default that Node doesn't necessarily have. There are backend frameworks in Node, but Django is a full-fledged framework. So comparing the two is just not a fair comparison at all. I think the better comparison would probably be like Python versus Node. But, that's just my feeling. Alberto, welcome back. How's it going? Let's see. I want to see if I can grab this one. Alberto with the super chat. I think that I fixed it, but let's see here. Yes, it does show it along with what your super chat amount was. Thank you very much, Alberto. I would imagine you can all see what the super chat amounts are, but I'm going to fix this at some point. Anyway, good afternoon. Using a Jupyter Notebook server with AWS EC2 for the data science is a way of ETL for more professional way. So using Jupyter Notebooks on AWS EC2, I actually talk about this, or I have a video showing you how to do this. Is it a good way for doing ETL? Yeah, absolutely. I think like a more professional way, or more specifically, a more automated way, would be using some sort of pipeline task runner, much like PyPyR. Okay, there's a number of task runners like this, or pipeline runners. But what you would want to do probably is you would probably want to actually have your project or your task all situated inside of PyPyR, or inside of Jupyter. You solidify all of the ETL things that you need to do, and then you use something like PyPyR once it's ready to go. PyPyR you just basically put it in a pipeline of commands and steps and all the things that you might need to do to actually accomplish what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your ETL. Thanks for the question there, Alberto. Good to see you back. Let's see here. Wow, a lot of good questions. All right. Any Django REST framework and React courses planned? Yes, actually, I already have one. Tweet Me 2 is a really big one on that does exactly that. It's not solely Django REST framework. Like, I do have still a lot of Django model view template or MVT stuff in there, but the Django REST framework is also used because when you're building a REST API in Django, that's just like the best way to do that, Okay, which one to choose, Angular or React? I know I talk about this fairly often on live streams. I honestly think that maybe I need to start having live streams. I need a better way to actually respond to all these questions in live streams. Like, I need a bot that automatically goes, hey, Justin already answered this here. That might give you the sense of that question. And I will say, there's somebody completely spamming right now. Ask the question one time, otherwise, you're just gonna be gone. I'm not gonna answer those questions over and over again, right? Okay, cool. So let me actually answer this question: Angular or React? Angular has a lot of things built in by default, and you kind of have to stick with all of Angular if you're doing Angular as your front end. React, on the other hand, is really good for small components. You can build one single component and use no React on the rest of your application, which is really cool. Angular, you could kind of get away with doing that too, but Angular is a little bit bigger, or at least that's how it's been for a long time. Maybe it's changed a little bit. I haven't looked at it too much lately, but I really like React. Another really good option that's very similar to React is Vue.js. Thanks for the question. Can Flutter take over other app development tools? Flutter is a very popular thing right now. I believe it's written in Dart. So the question, I guess, is Dart going to take over development? Yeah, that's certainly possible. Flutter's gotten a lot of traction. I have yet to actually work with it, so it's something that I'm definitely interested in trying out myself. Cool. Next question. Since you're into Python and JavaScript technologies mainly, how would you approach mobile development now? Would you go with Kotlin, Swift, or React Native / Flutter? I definitely would go with React Native because I know React so well, right? Now, if you don't know React so well, then I guess the question is, what is your goal? If your goal is to actually build just mobile applications, then you probably need a backend of some kind where Django can come in. And then maybe you just pick I would say pick React or Flutter, because you can literally React Native or Flutter, because you can literally write one code base mostly and it will work on both iOS and Android. Like, to me, that's the most logical way. But there's probably things that you can do in Swift, like if you're writing for iOS, or Kotlin, that if you're writing for just Android, that you can't necessarily do right now in React Native or Flutter. Maybe in React Native, for example, there's not the 3D or VR support that iOS has to the level you might need for something they just released, right? So that's where the actual supported native languages that these platforms have, you might need to go with them for the latest and greatest. I actually don't know. I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about that, but it's a good question. I should research a little bit more. Yes, Node is a runtime and Django is a framework. That is correct. That was what I was alluding to, but you put it a lot more eloquently. Thank you for doing a live stream early. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for coming out. It is crazy how much spam you can get on these live streams. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. But I mean, if you ask the question, I'm going through these questions one by one. Certainly won't get to every question where you guys can, if you can, just do a super chat. Next time when you go live, turn on slow mode. That way people can't spam. Yeah, I'm curious what slow mode is, Heisenberg. Thanks for mentioning that. All right, Rez, back to your question. If I don't do, you want me to do a video on Lambda and map functions? Oh, thank you for that. That's a good idea. Those would be like a lot smaller and shorter videos. I guess I'm curious, like, do you guys want to see more where like I kind of do like a presentation or a PowerPoint where I just kind of discuss one topic and then maybe show a live code example right after that, and then done, right? Versus so many of the things that I do are really around actually building a project of some kind, right? There are some that are just basic conceptual things, but it's pretty much always in service to building a project. But there's a lot of us that are just like trying to get a little bit more knowledge on individual things or individual concepts that maybe it'd be a good idea to have like a little presentation, like almost like a PowerPoint or slide presentation with having code shortly after. So you see the concept and then the implementation. You know what I mean? Yeah. What do you guys think of that? Is that a good idea? Yes, no, maybe? Let me know. Cool. I want to start data science from humanities. So you're leaving humanities. Is that what you're saying to me now? If that's the case, just pick up some data science books or a data science course. You're probably going to need to learn a little bit about Python to jump in. So yeah. Yeah, I finally got the chat on the stream. Yeah, this is my little project that I'm working on. It's actually working pretty well. Perhaps I just need to start letting anyone with a live stream just use it. See if there's things that I'm not thinking about that would be really good here. I know there's a few features that I still want to add, like the actual usage of it, the actual website that I'm using to display these live chats. But it is, I'm like really pleased with how simple it actually is. I use OBS Studio for the streaming. OBS Studio does the bulk of the work, along with YouTube, of course, right? But the challenge is always like how to make better, more interactive content that's not overloading, right? And so I'm hoping that this is how it's done. But thanks for watching and thanks for noticing. Next one. Should I focus on Django doc or the Django REST framework? I think mainly focus on the documentation for the Django REST framework. Or what? Okay. I think maybe this is an example of like just getting your question in as quickly as possible instead of taking the time to write it out. I really appreciate it when you take the time to write it out. Even if I don't get to it right now, at some point, I'll just have all of these questions backed up, and the ones that I miss, maybe I'll start doing in the next live stream as the beginning to just really get things going. That's actually where I want to go with this, because at the very beginning of these, sometimes it takes a few minutes for people to know about the live stream even going on, or people just don't even show up. So it'd be better to just have questions already and just go for them. You know what I mean? So hopefully I'll solve that in the future. Anyways, do you guys like my tangents? I do it all the time. This is like exactly how normal conversations would go with me too, by the way. Except right now I'm just talking to myself in my studio. Okay, so what should you mainly focus on for the Django documentation for the Django REST framework? Well, first you need to have a mental map of how it works. So the Django REST framework docs have a tutorial, I think, and you could probably just go through that. So if you already know Django pretty well, let's take a look together. What do you think? Yeah, so here's the tutorial right here. You can just go through this, assuming that you already know Django, and get a sense for how all of this works. Now, once you do that, then it's a matter of actually wrapping in a client of some kind and running through it. Now, of course, I actually have a bunch of series that use the Django REST framework, so by all means, go through it that way as well. The documentation, I think the documentation is information, and what I try to do with all of my projects and all of my videos is to distill that information into how you can actually use it, right? So the source of information is always going to be probably the best place to actually learn the ins and outs of any given, library, in this case, the Django REST framework. So if you can stand reading the documentation, you totally should. So yeah, cool. Thanks for the question. Next one. Michael, thank you for the super chat. I will get to your question in just a second. Faith, what do you think about the future of multi-page web applications compared to single-page web applications? So single-page web applications are really interesting in that they have JavaScript pretty much running the show, right? So the JavaScript actually changes what's rendered. I think we will always see both in action. The reason being, multi-page web applications are orders of magnitude easier to create than the single-page web applications. So until that they get to the same exact place, we're always going to see multi-page web applications. Because for me, for example, if I'm going to put together an application right now, I'm going to make it as best as it possibly can in the shortest amount of time, right? And that usually means get the features that don't need to be like super user interactive or the best user interface. Get those just done, right? So like a good example is like your account page and changing your profile. Do you really need that to be integrated into a REST API and a framework and all this stuff? You know, maybe eventually, but right away, it's just a lot easier to render out a template with a Django form. And that's also true with other kinds of backends where you don't necessarily also have to put in an API of some kind with all the authentication that goes in that, just using the built-in tools. So I think multi-page web apps will exist for a long time going forward. So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks for that one. Appreciate it. Okay, so let me load up Michael's here. I still got some work to do on how to actually display these super chats when they happen. This one's coming off. Let me just fix that. There we go. Michael, thank you so much. Glad that you've enjoyed what I do on YouTube. By far the best resource for learning in Django. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions, Michael. I definitely appreciate the support and the super chat. That helps me keep doing these live chats for real. It's super motivating when you see someone, hey, I'm going to give you a little super chat tip, if you will. It's a lot of fun. But thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Jarvis, Michael Jarvis. Is that your real last name? Because that's pretty cool. It's like your Iron Man's buddy or something. Okay. Next one. Let's see here. I have basic knowledge of a computer, Word, Excel, etc. Well, if you know Excel, then getting into data science, well, it depends on how well you know Excel, of course. But if you know Excel, you can absolutely get into data science from that, because Excel is a spreadsheet tool to analyze data, right? So you don't need to learn programming to analyze data. You can use just Excel. So that's totally something that you could do right now. To get into data science with the actual programming side of it, you just need to learn something like Python or Rust or Go, Python or JavaScript even. Python is probably a really good place to start. Maybe even SQL. Python or SQL are probably really good places to start. Python's probably the easiest one to do that. So yeah, just learn Python and start analyzing data. I think that's how you get into data science. Thanks for the question. How to detect deepfakes, like for image classification, how to detect whether or not it's a deepfake. This would take, well, the approach I would take, I don't actually know, there's definitely a paper on how to do this, but the approach I would take is to take a bunch of real images that I for sure know about, that they are real, maybe my own personal images, and then actually modify them using deepfakes to generate a bunch of deepfake images of roughly the same real images to build my basic classifier. And then from there, I would start to try and classify actual deepfakes and real images that are not of my original data set. That's the approach I would take. I'm actually not sure how effective that specifically would be, because you'd probably need a good amount of data. Deepfakes can be detected, though. This is something that has been documented in one of those docs. So yeah, or one of those papers somewhere, I think on archive.org. I think that's what it is. Cool. Archive has an X in there and a V, right? Yeah, something like that. Anyways, so what are my thoughts about Django with multi-tenant application? So Django managing a multi-tenant application, like actually having, I think, multi-tenant on the server. This is something I don't recommend that you do. I think there's a lot of potential security flaws. Instead, you should isolate your environments using something like Docker, and then Django could manage maybe the Docker relationship, but even that you might want to use Kubernetes for, or something along those lines. But if you're like talking about having Django manage the access to Docker running other Django applications, you totally could do that. But Django itself, I don't think is very well suited for multi-tenant applications. But then again, I haven't done it a lot. I should probably start off with that. I haven't done that a lot to where I need to use Django to run multi-tenant applications, similar to like what Shopify does, right? Those are multi-tenant applications. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. I should probably look into that a little bit more, to be honest. But like I said, I just haven't done it or needed to, really. But good question. Let's see. Benjamin, thank you for the live chat. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and answer this. Like, to search for those live chats is just not efficient at all. So Benjamin says, thought on styled components versus separate CSS or Sass style sheets and React. Any style component CSP compatible, or style components CSP compatible. I actually don't remember what CSP stands for, the acronym there. But I actually prefer, much prefer using the Sasser or CSS, like actually creating all of your styles outside of React. I don't think they should happen together unless your user needs to quickly prototype something that requires your component to be stylized inside of React. I think using your CSS or your Sass as a completely separate component is the way to do it, right? And some people are like, oh, well, what about compiling and all this stuff and actually seeing it change in real time? So what I want to show you is a really cool tool that makes it easy to actually add in Sass and React.js and it running at the same time. So it compiles pretty much every time you save it. And that's this parcel here. So parcel is really cool because let me just scroll down to their index.js right here, right? So whatever you actually put into index.html, whether it's index.js or index.sass or any other, it doesn't have to be index, it doesn't have to be named that, but anything you import into this index file, Parcel will actually compile for you in a very effective and efficient manner, way better than pretty much anything else. So I use this all the time. I haven't talked about it yet on the channel other than in these live streams, but this is really cool. So it makes it a lot easier to actually run and build your styles and all your style sheets outside of any given component itself. So hopefully that answers your question, Benjamin. Thank you for that super chat. All right, back to the other stream. I'm getting my first client for an e-commerce website. So I'm assuming this means freelancing of some kind. Awesome, congratulations. Jalapeno, is that how you would pronounce that? I like that because I love jalapenos. So hopefully I'm not offending you by saying jalapeno. I definitely am not intending to offend anybody the way I pronounce your names or anything like that. Okay, so is adding payments complicated? Stripe has an amazing API and also has really good developer support. And a lot of people have covered how to integrate Stripe into web applications, including myself, right? But I don't think it's actually that hard to do. If you can build I mean, even just looking at my code on GitHub, if you can build something like my e-commerce application there, it's right on GitHub. I think it's on the main repo. If you could actually build all of that in Django, for example, no problem. You can absolutely integrate Stripe. It's really not that challenging. The part that might trip you up a little bit is actually the JavaScript side of things. But even that, they have a lot of great documentation to execute it. Thanks for the question. Django Web RTC tutorial, please. Thank you for the suggestion. Appreciate it. What about Ionic? Ionic's really cool. Ionic now supports React.js too, which is great. Awesome thing to see. Yes, so that's the person who was spamming me. How fun. Yet another feature I need to fix on this little chat thing that I'm doing. So Ionic is really interesting, really cool. I'm not so sure about where it's going to go in the future now that Flutter has really taken the world by storm in many ways, and same with React Native. But Ionic still has a place because it's still been doing really, really well. Cool. Let's see here. Oh, let me just jump back real quick. I'll come back to this next one. But why do we need Django and Celery? So Celery is a task management queue or task processing queue, right? So let's say, for instance, you need to send out thousands of emails a day with Django. Now, when these emails happen, you can do it asynchronously using asynchronous views, or you can add it into a task queue using Celery, or you can actually write raw Redis commands themselves. So Redis is a data store that Celery uses. Or you can actually send these emails based off of when the requests come in, right? So if a user signs up for your service, for example, and you want to send them an email right away, you can do that in that request response cycle, or you can actually delay that from happening instantly and also delay it from happening on your main web process, but delay it to go to a worker process, which is a completely separate process that won't cog or slow down your request response cycle or that web process at all. So you can actually move it into another process, and that's what Celery is really good for. That's one thing. Another thing is if you need, let's say, for instance, you need to schedule a social post. You want to schedule something going on Twitter every Monday at 8 a.m. Celery with Django actually can do that really, really well based off of things that you store in your database too. So there's a lot of really good uses for Celery. So one of it is the task queue part. The other one is actually scheduling things as well. So yeah, good question. Okay. Oh, Umberto, another question. Thank you for that. Another question and another super chat. Alberto, I feel like you are like my number one super chatter. I love this. Thank you so much, man. You do it more. I honestly can't say that anyone else has come close to how many times you've done it. So I appreciate that. From what I understand, async web scraping is more powerful than non-async web scrape. In which case is actually better and when? So whenever you come to asynchronous programming, things get complicated, right? It's not always that easy to identify when errors happen in that code. This is true for all kinds of asynchronous code, but especially asynchronous programming in Python, because there's a lot of callbacks that end up happening, right? Or you're waiting for another function or method to actually finish and complete before you can move to whatever's next, right? So synchronous web scraping is all blocking, so it goes one after another, right? You're not really adding complexity of asynchronous scraping. So if you need to prototype something really quickly, synchronous programming is always going to be the right choice. And this is true with synchronous web scraping. Now, the other part of synchronous web scraping is overloading any given service, right? So if you are trying to scrape a service that's not very big and you use it asynchronously, your chances of overloading their servers is really high, which means your chances of getting blocked from their servers is a lot higher. So synchronously doing it, it's a lot less likely for that to happen, because the asynchronous part of things, you might accidentally, not intentionally, overload their servers, because you can now asynchronously just grab all sorts of responses to their server. So I think when you're learning, using synchronous web scraping is the way to go. If you want to start getting a lot better and you have a really solid grasp on doing web scraping, then you're going to want to learn how to do asynchronous web scraping. That's the time to do it, because asynchronous web scraping is incredibly fast, right? You can actually scrape 100 websites almost in the same amount of time as you would scrape one. And of course, when I say websites, I mean any URL, basically, almost in the same amount of time as one, maybe slightly longer than that. But asynchronous web scraping allows for that because it's concurrently going to each page with that. So I would say just master web scraping first, get really good at it, doing it synchronously, and then move to the asynchronous version of it. Thanks for the live chat, Umberto. Okay, Umberto. Right. Next question. Love your tutorials. Thank you so much. How do you get good at database management for creating a website and in Django? How do you actually get good at database management? Well, with that, you're going to want to learn some sort of database programming language, right? So If you're using a SQL database, then learn SQL. So whether it's MySQL, PostgreSQL, I think even Microsoft SQL Server, there probably are some nuances that I'm not aware of each one of these things as it relates to SQL. But learning SQL will absolutely help you better understand how you do the queries you need to do in Django, right? So more efficient querying of your database, so your Django application's more performant. Django, of course, does a lot of this work for you, and doing .select related is often a really great way to improve performance with practically nothing. I think for the Django side of this, I believe Danny Fieldroy, or Greenfield, as he used to be called. So he has something called 2 Scoops of Django. Pretty much any version of that will teach you a lot about some of the best practices in Django. As far as SQL stuff, I don't actually have a resource to recommend at this point, but I'm sure there's some great tutorials on YouTube that teach you really good SQL. But of course, to me, it always comes back down to like actually doing a project. So yeah, thank you so much. You love the new comment style. Cool, thank you. I'm glad you enjoy it, and I am super far behind, and I actually need to get going in a few minutes. So what I'll try to do is just answer questions pretty quickly. We'll see. Django or Flask, depends on the project, but I often use Flask. Next one, can we talk about the support feature in Pro membership? I've been learning code for a few years. You've lost your motivation and reached the point of not knowing what to do next. What is it that you're trying to do? What are you hoping to accomplish learning code, right? So are you trying to build your own project, or are you trying to get a job? Very, very different reasons to do both, right? So if it's trying to get a job, I'd recommend finding the best possible situation with a junior developer job, where they know what your skill set is, and then that way you can work it all the time. So the demands of work now correspond to the demands of what you need for learning. Hopefully that answers your question. I didn't know what you meant by talking about the support feature in the Pro membership exactly for coding for entrepreneurs. I'm assuming that's what you mean. It's just a matter of, you can ask questions, and I do my best to answer them for those Pro members when they happen, especially code-related ones, not like this. Okay, next one. Node.js versus Django versus Laravel, which has more potential for freelancing? All and any of those things, right? Those are all very, very popular, and therefore a lot of potential for freelancing. Is Django becoming obsolete? No, I don't believe that at all. Especially if you look at a recent video from Andrew Goodwin in the PyCon Australia. I think they did a web version of it. Take a look at what it is that they're working on. But I don't think backend technologies don't change nearly as much, because the front end of the user interface changes a lot, because they're always trying to push forward for non-technical users, right? They're trying to make it really, really cool all the time. But at the end of the day, most of those things have some sort of CRUD relationship with the backend, create, retrieve, update, delete. So something like Django, I think, is going to be around for a really, really long time for that reason. So no, I don't think Django is becoming obsolete. Next up, do I use async views in Django 3.1? What can I say about it? I have used them. I haven't used them enough. They are very, very similar to channels 2 from Django. So if you use Django channels 2, then using async views in Django 3.1 and above is going to happen. And that video I just mentioned about Andrew Goodwin talking about the future of Django, that actually talks about this a lot. So definitely take a look at that. How to start a project, like where to start, and wireframes. Wireframing can be really useful. My suggestion is actually just to take out a piece of paper and a fairly thick marker and draw out the features that you want. The reason for that is you're not getting into the detail, you're just getting the wireframes, the general structure of how this application should work, and that can create enough of a mental map to start actually building it. Once you build out the very rough example, then you can start to improve a lot. But the goal is to not spend too much time on prepping to build, but rather a lot more time on actually building, right? And then tweaking along the way. That's always my recommendation. Next one, is there any scope in D3JS? Do we have any plans to do this? Is that what you're asking? If that's the question, yeah, probably at some point, but there's just so much to cover about so many things. So I really try to focus on things that I'm really good at, or the things that I'm really, really interested in. So both of those things is what I end up covering most of the time. But of course, if I'm a lot more open to doing actual sponsored videos. So if there's sponsored videos that are coming out that want me to literally cover specific topics and they're related to those sponsored videos, I'm like all on board with that. So that's for those of you who actually want to sponsor a video. I'm not sure if you asking the question, AS Dexter, is one of those people, but I know there's a lot of stuff covering D3.js. So hopefully that helps. Cool. Couple more super chats. Thank you guys. Benjamin, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the things that both you and Herberto have been doing with these super chats. Oh yeah, CSP, content security policy. What a silly thing to forget. Yeah. So why do you, in general, do you think it's best practice to avoid inline styles and React style components, or do you prefer writing your own styles using a CSS framework like Bootstrap or React? Thank you for the clarification, Benjamin. I think I mentioned this before. So I would much rather use a CSS framework because writing all of the responsiveness in CSS has gotten significantly easier. But Bootstrap, I already know all of at least the scaffolding, or the responsive grid. I already know it so well, right? And so I can actually just jump into writing all of the customizations I want from that, right? And of course, it doesn't have to be Bootstrap. It could be Foundation. It's another great, front-end library style situation. And I actually do think it's best to avoid a lot of inline styles or styled React components. Doing inline styled components, I think, is definitely viable for rapid prototyping, right? So if you're building an application, you just need to get it done and you do inline styles there, whether it's in React or, just in pure HTML, I think that's fine, right? But you always want to keep in mind that what you're going to be doing is you're going to be coming back and you're going to want to improve those things later and separate out the CSS from there. I really can't think of a reason to keep CSS in line, because another aspect of it is if you actually use a content delivery network, that's going to be more secure, but then also you're going to have it distributed for your CSS a lot more. And then your JavaScript components, the other part of this is you can rapidly iterate on various versions of these components and not remember which version has the styled component or not, right? So in other words, like you have your CSS that's deployed, that's using a content delivery network, and your JavaScript, if you have multiple versions of your JavaScript, you know for sure that your styles are in the style sheets themselves, not inside of React. I think there probably is some security concern with using inline style sheets, but that's something I definitely need to learn more about for it. Thanks for that question, Benjamin. I'm curious to see what you find. So if you do find some interesting stuff, just shoot me a tweet or send me a comment of some kind. I would love to check it out. I'm going to go ahead and post my Twitter right now. I'm definitely trying to use Twitter a lot more. So hit me up there. Umberto, thanks, man. Appreciate it. You feel like you're investing in yourself a lot. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Like taking the time to, listen to these Q&As. I realize like I'm not like some things are like kind of all over the place. I appreciate everyone, taking the time to listen and do that. And especially you, Umberto, you've been here so much. But the big thing here is actually spending the time to hear the questions that come up, because really it's not about the answers all the time, right? To me, doing these live Q&As are great because they really challenge what I should know in many areas, because I don't know what your backgrounds are, but you're asking, sometimes you ask really, really good questions, and that's where I need to dig deeper. And I think, Umberto, you're right. Listening to some of these questions is probably where a lot of the nuggets are, right? Hopefully my answers help illuminate that as well. But so much is the questions. Now, in college, I had the great opportunity to be in a seminar with the founder of Kinko's, which is now FedEx Office. Look up the story. It's really cool. His name's Paul Orfala. But we would sit around for like 20 minutes, maybe even longer, almost every class, and just ask questions. Nobody would answer. It'd be like, you ask a question, it goes to the next person, and the next person, and the next person. All questions. Sometimes they started to get in the same theme. But the what I took away from that is it's so much about the question that's being asked, not always about the answer itself. So yeah, thanks for coming out, Umberto, and you guys, thanks for asking all of these great questions and really challenging what I know, because we all need to learn. We all absolutely need to invest, and to me, this is a way to invest in what it is that I'm doing as well. Cool. Yeah, so I got maybe like 5 more minutes, guys. So if we have any other major pressing questions, please let me know. Thanks for watching the 30 Days of Python, Josh, and thanks for the comment. My live stream questions are so far behind. I apologize. To like 30 minutes behind, 40 minutes behind. Yeah. So do I prefer React Expo or React Native? Or you export React Native when needed? I don't have a solid question on this or a solid answer because I haven't given either one enough due to really make a solid opinion on it. React Expo was awesome for really quick testing, where React Native is great to actually see how it's compiled on my actual phone as its application. If you're not familiar with what these things do, React Expo allows you to roughly run the application without installing or connecting your phone anymore. React Native, you actually attach your phone to your computer and it compiles on that phone to use it that way. That's like a pretty poor but rough explanation of what it is that those things do. Thanks for the question there. Will there be more Django courses from you? No, I'm done. Never again. Never going to do Django courses ever again. I've retired from Django. Didn't you see my... Okay, that's silly. Of course, yes, absolutely. I'm gonna, like, I don't know if I'll ever stop doing Django courses. There we go. Next one. Okay, maybe like 3 more questions. I'll actually scroll down to the bottom for those of you who are late as well, because there are a lot of spam questions that I've got in here. I really need to figure out how to fix that on the displayed comments. Can we integrate Python as a backend for Flutter? Yes, using Django, Flask, Fast API, a lot of things. Cool. Okay, cool. Let me just pull off this here. I'm just going to go ahead and answer these last few questions. How do you make a single page application in Django with jQuery? I don't recommend doing it with jQuery. So use a different JavaScript library like React, Vue, Angular. jQuery is on its way out, probably. No, definitely. And I'm really curious, if you're watching the live stream and you're not subscribed, how'd you hear about it? Or why aren't you subscribed? Let me know. Are you going to make Flutter tutorials? I probably need to do that at some point. Thank you for the question. Big fan from Tajiskan? Am I pronouncing that correctly, Jovid? Probably not. A friend of mine was in Taji in Afghanistan. I don't know where Tajikistan is. Do you recommend using Django template engine or separate JS library? Just make the request back in. So the Django template engine, or MVT, you can absolutely use, and I highly recommend it. It's really fast to prototype things and get things going. So yeah, you can also use JavaScript in there with that as well. So hopefully you get that done. It really depends on the project, right? So many things depend on the project. So when in doubt, if you're like, oh, do you prefer this or that as it relates to how things render, it always depends on the project. Okay. 2 more questions. Okay, when will 30 days of JavaScript drop? I don't have an answer there, but I am working on it. I'm a little bit behind. This was one of those weeks where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get so much done, and did not get so much done. But that's okay. That happens sometimes. I've had a great week overall. It was my wife's birthday yesterday, so it did nothing but family time. It was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. I highly recommend that you take time off every once in a while. I try to do it, but it's really hard to do. I really enjoy what I do. Let's see. React or Bootstrap? That is not a valid question. React and Bootstrap can work together. If you're talking about the jQuery side of Bootstrap, that's going away. So even with the jQuery side, you can still use React and Bootstrap. Cool. Very last question. Programming life. Is it a good idea to remove inbuilt Django application authentication? No. Unless you have a really good reason and you're really good at security. It's not a good reason to remove inbuilt Django auth. Anyways, hey guys, I gotta go. Gotta go pick up my daughter from daycare, which is grandma's house. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you soon. I am still going to be doing more of these live streams, and I want to improve the way they work. So let me know if you liked the comments as they appeared. I know towards the end I didn't do that, but of course the comments were, these things right here. So if you do like those things, let me know. I absolutely think not only displaying them is important, but also in the future having some sort of bot that automatically responds to the section that I answer any given question is certainly what I want to do. So if you like this idea, let me know. I would love to see if maybe I can help you on your live streams as well. There are so many questions I didn't even come close to getting to. So thank you for bearing with me and still showing up to ask questions and hopefully get yours answered. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks again.